Mechanistry has announced Timberborn 1.0 and a new update has hit the experimental branch. But those patch notes are over 3,000 words, and nobody wants to read those. Worry not, my friend, for I have distilled all the information relating to new gameplay changes down into one quick video. We'll go over things that will affect both old and new saves, but I won't go into the new modding features. I'll save that for someone who knows what they're talking about. Without further ado, let's get into exploring this experimental update. Hello, and welcome back to Tutopolis. I did not expect to be back here so soon after ending the series, but just this week, the experimental for Update 1.0 was released, arrived. And I wanted to do a small little preview of all the things that are in it. If you're not aware of how to access the experimental, go to Steam, find Timberborn on your Steam library, right click on it, go to Properties, Betas, and then the drop down menu should have an option for Experimental Branch. Unfortunately, if you have bought the game through something that is not Steam, I don't know exactly how you get the experimental branch or if you even can. That is the way that you do it on Steam. Fairly easy. Do be aware of two things. Number one, your old saves don't automatically transfer over. You can copy them into the experimental saves folder, but by default, the game keeps experimental and regular game saves separate, and usually best practice is to start a new save game for experimental anyway. The second thing to be aware of is that if you play with mods, this will break every single one of them. Now, if you pay attention to the Steam Workshop, you may see that mods start saying compatible with experimental 1.0, but off the bat and as a general rule, if you have any mods installed, they will not work, at least until they're updated. So you will want to, usually I boot Timberborn in safe mode and then from there disable all mods from the load order screen. I'm not 100% sure you need to boot into safe mode, but I do it anyway because it feels safer. But back to Tutopolis, we will see that things look a little different. Partially, it's flooding over and over and over. Now, I was looking at it earlier. One of the things we can do is if we drop this floodgate all the way down to 0, it'll eventually stop flooding this. I think this is an issue with using an old save with the new water physics that is causing issues. It might also be that the sluices are set wrong for the new water physics, but it will, at least if you have something similar to this, it'll take some tweaking to get it all right. Look at that that new water texture, though. That's a very nice change. Among other things, just in the UI, we can see that up here and down here, our notifications have changed. I'm not sure how keen I am on these. They definitely look more modern, but they also don't really match the rest of the UI style. Now, maybe the UI style as a whole will change, and I do like that you can actually make this one smaller so that you only see the most recent beaver or bot that was created or died. That I do appreciate, but these ones, at the very least, the positioning of them seems a bit odd. They're kind of up above where that notification thing used to be, but now it's not there. Anyway, that's kind of the obvious UI stuff. Now, largely, if you are playing on an old map, very little will have changed. What we've gotten so far in Experimental is mostly a map changing update, which we will go over in a little while. Here on Tutopolis, we have a few things that we could explore. Number one, we now have spiral staircases. 350 science points, 1 log, and 4 treated planks. So these are not a early game unlock. As we can see, these planks go up and to the right rather than just straight on. I'm sure this would be a great thing to show off. But I don't really have any. Oh, maybe here. So you can do something like that. It makes spacing a little tighter. Of course, right here it was not totally necessary. But it would save you space if, for example, you were building something like this. As we can see, to make a compact staircase, you can now do just a 2x2 structure rather than having to do the old 3x3 staircase with paths and stairs between each of them. So that'll save space if you are looking to do that. It will also make getting up mountains easier if you're not on this map that I have put a lot of time and effort into terraforming. And just as a slight reminder, I did say it goes up and to the right, but as with anything in Timberborn, you can flip that around and make it go up and to the left with F. So F will make it flip back and forth like that. We also have 2 new decoration items down here under decoration. We have pole banner and just square banner. Both are going to be 700 science points. The pole banner does cost more logs at 4 logs, 4 planks, and 1 extract. The square banner costs 2 logs, 4 planks, and 1 extract. These are going to be like the detailer where you can change the icon on them. You could also upload your own icons, like I have uploaded the backwards to topless logo that they put on their tails in this city, because that's the way I had to flip it to get it to show up with that orientation. So it is backwards and upside down on these banners, but I could have flipped that easy enough. And as with the detailer, you have the option to browse to just upload your own files easily. The second to last major update that will apply even to old maps is going to be the copy feature. So the way this works is very simple. All we have to do is we hover over the storage building that we want to copy. We press V, and then it'll bring up this screen. This storage building will be highlighted. Then we mouse over another storage building that we want to copy it to, and we just click, and we will see that the settings for this storage building will have magically moved over to this one. So this is now extract, and unfortunately it might have been a bad example because it does not have any sort of hauler settings. But if we were to mouse over this small tank back here, which is prioritized, we could see that moving that to this small tank, it will copy the priority. The other big update that is huge, probably bigger than the last thing I'm going to talk about to me personally, we now have native pipette tool. So before, if you saw me hover over something and be able to copy it real quickly, it was a mod called the pipette tool. It did just that. You hover over a building, press a button, you can copy it. That is now using the same copy button as before. B, you can copy a building and build it somewhere else. That is huge. I am so glad that that is finally a thing that you can just do natively without a mod. Huge shout out to the pipette tool that made the past year of playing Timberborn on this channel a lot less annoying, but I'm glad that it is finally native. And the last big thing that is going to affect every single map, waterfall flow rate is no longer capped. So if we come down here, we set these floodgates all the way up and this one all the way down, we will see that the water will flow out of this single floodgate much more realistically. It's not limited to only 2.2, as there is more than 2.2 coming through here. So the fact that this floodgate can support the entire flow kind of proves that whole point. Now, there is still a volume issue, and I'm kind of surprised that this is able to handle all of this water as well as it is. Maybe this will eventually overflow. But volume is still a thing, so you probably cannot just shove all of your water through a 1x1 space. And yeah, as we can see here, that won't work. it will start to overflow based off of volume. And though it always kind of did here, I think it actually has dramatically changed, because it would kind of flow a little bit over the edge, but now it appears to fully flow over the edge back here. But we will also see that power wheels, this one is generating 700 horsepower just in and of itself, because it is getting the full brunt of that water through here. And we got ones producing 500, 600. We can even put those two back and then see that it's not affecting the water flow here. And it hasn't affected the water flow over here, which is just overflowing, isn't it? Oh, and just speaking of water flow, the other thing is that we now get this nice little indicator of exactly how much power a water wheel is going to generate in any specific spot. So we can see that there is quite a difference in some of these. We've got 450 right in the middle versus 300 on either side. This is going to only be 124, 125. Up here, of course we can't see it, but that would show 600. 600. So you have much more, not control, but predictability for how much your water wheels are going to generate in power. So you don't have to guess anymore. And that is going to be pretty much everything that you will notice on an old map. So let's boot up one of the two new maps and check that out. And the first thing we'll notice when we go back here to select our new map is that in addition to these beginner maps, we now have a new category of map that is unconventional. That's going to be Beaver Roam and Diorama have been reclassified as unconventional. Also, both of the two new maps, Oasis and Pressure, are unconventional. We are going to pop into Oasis since I think this will show the new features off better than Pressure will. First off, new little notification for when you start your colony, which is kind of fun. We'll just make sure that these beavers aren't going to die here, and then I will abandon them. I could just let them perish, but I don't want to. And while we're sitting here, we will notice that this beaver right here is doing a new idle animation. So there's, I think, two new idle animations. They have this one and that one we just saw, tail tapping and looking. But a big part of the reason that I chose this map to showcase these features is because the main water source is one of the new water sources. So this is the water seep. It is different than a normal source block. This one will only fill water up to this height that is 0.8. And it wouldn't matter how much we built up this lake pond area thing, because this water seep would not be able to get the water any higher than this. Now, that is not the only new water source, because up here we actually have one of them, but it's actually not the source block there. The source block is going to be here. So this is an aquifer. An aquifer puts out water like a source block. We can see strength 1 here, but they do not do so until you have added a drill on top of it and powered it. Now we actually do have a drill over here that I will show off in a second. So if you go down to water, you have the option for an aquifer drill. This I did not see in the water options for Topless, so I guess this only shows up in an actual new map. But that's 40 planks, 25 gears, 15 metal. Not early game, but not mid game by any stretch. All you gotta do, you gotta unlock it by actually having enough science and then build it up there. Once you power it with 400 horsepower, it'll start drilling into the rock below. And then as we see, it kind of acts the exact same way as a normal water source. And we can actually test that for sure by unlocking and building some levees. And if it goes above the 0.8, it's acting as a normal water source and not as a water seep. The other benefit of aquifer drills is that it is the first time that you can turn a water source on and off through normal gameplay. So if you pause an aquifer drill, it will actually stop pumping water. Did not realize that until just now, but there you go. Somebody, I'm sure, will figure out some insane thing to do with that. And just because I wanted to test it, it does look like aquifers do get bad water contaminated during a bad tide. And they also stop flowing entirely during a drought. So don't think that you can use an aquifer to skip having to deal with droughts. So those are the two new ways that water can spawn on a map. Of course, we do still have the old traditional water source. On the topic of water and water spawns, much like the old blockage that we are all used to, there's also now a natural dam. So that's basically the same as a blockage. But unlike being a full block tall, this is going to be only half a block tall. The natural dam is the exact same height as a regular dam at 0.65, not at 0.5 as the patch notes suggested. So that's interesting. Moving on, we have a new power generation method. We see these geothermal fields here. They produce an infinite amount of stable power. So if we go down here to power, we can see that we now have geothermal engines. As far as I know, they're the same on Folktales and Iron Teeth. Maybe that'll change, but they're 50 logs, 30 planks, 160 science points. So you can probably access these pretty early on in a playthrough. You build them just directly on top, and then they'll put out 400 horsepower, consistent, easy. But you, of course, only have a certain number of them on the map, and once you have used all of them, you've used all of them. But for example, on this map, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If we hooked all of those up to the same power network, that would be a consistent infinite generation of 1600 horsepower. So regardless of what our water flow was doing or wind power on the Folktales, we would always have that 1600 horsepower. Now, the biggest thing that this brings to new maps is, of course, going to be all of our ruins. So we have long had these ruins, the ones that you get scrap metal from, but there are a couple of new ones. As we already saw, we have this ancient aquifer drill. So this is going to basically be the same as the added aquifer drill, although it appears to demand half of the power, with the built one being 400 and the ancient one being 200. If we just slap down some power right behind it, we will see that it starts pulling up water. I guess we can double check the flow rate with some water wheels. So this is putting out about 130 horsepower worth of flow. This one is putting out about the same. So it looks like the ancient aquifer is just better, which is kind of surprising. Obviously it has to spawn on the map, but if it does, then you're basically set. I wonder if that'll get fixed before 1.0 releases, or if that is actually intentional. Now, additionally, we have 6 other types of ruins. We have the reserve pile, the reserve warehouse, and the reserve tank. These can be added to maps by map makers. They can have them already have, say, water in them. And then if you get your beavers out to it, you'll be able to access whatever is in those piles or warehouses or reserve tanks. Interestingly, none of them are solid, but you can also use them to store 200 or 300 or 160 of anything that you could normally store in piles, warehouses, or tanks. So it'll be fun to see how people incorporate those into maps. Additionally, we have the Relic, and the Relic. 3 differently sized ruins that can be added to a map. We can see one up here. So if we were to bring our beavers all the way up here, maybe when we're making the aquifer, we could also get them up here to this relic and then order them to demolish it And doing so would grant us this allotment of science points. So once this is fully demolished, and also that's new, the demolition progress bar there, we will see that once this guy finishes demolishing, it's going to grant us 200 science points. When he finishes, there we go, and we're up to 3,700. So that is the most basic of these relics. It's a big telescope. We also have a crashed satellite that grants 800 science points, along with some sort of advanced dish. Maybe this is another satellite or another telescope, honestly. That grants 300 science points for destroying it. And then the last gameplay related change, because there are a lot of modding changes. I'm not going to go into those because I don't know enough about it. If you notice, when I click on things in dev mode, it has this new show blueprint button, which gives some sort of XML template for the reserve warehouse, and it does that for any building, all that kind of stuff, those rules and things that you need for making a mod or a new building. They've done a lot of stuff under the hood for people that do mod. Again, I don't know enough about it, so I'm not going to go into it other than showing that it is there. But the final gameplay change that is currently here in this update is going to be the addition of map hazards. Now, these are personally my favorite part about the new update because I think it is something that has been sorely missing from Timberborn. You can expand and expand and expand as much as you want. Really, the only thing bounding you is water and food and logistic breakdowns, and there has been no cost for just continuing to expand and expand. So there are two new things that have been added that make it a little bit more difficult. Neither of them are going to be huge gameplay changes, but they are going to make you think about things a little bit more. Now, the first one is going to be these brambles. Weirdly, I can't find these on any of the maps in the experimental build currently, so I guess they just haven't added them. But as we can see, they have a high chance of injury when the beavers come over here to demolish them. So if we sent our builders over here, they could break these down, but it's quite possible that in doing so, they would get injured and then need to sit out for a while. The same way injuries work with any sort of industrial building, but now it is a cost for expansion. And without doing so, you are just blocked from moving through this space. It's blocked to you. It looks like you can't even build like a platform over it. Now, you could build a overhang above it, I guess. As long as you're high enough up, you can build an overhang above it. But by the point that you have overhangs and you're using them to get over brambles, you probably can either spare the beavers or have bots that cannot be injured. So they'd be able to destroy these brambles with no problem. So the other hazard is going to be this unstable core. So this is essentially a very big dynamite. It explodes after a certain amount of time and after a certain amount of days after that certain amount of time. So it looks like the default is 5 cycles before it activates. Let's just see if we bump this up to cycle 5. There we go. So immediately upon cycle 5, the unstable core starts to blink, and it has 10 days before it'll go off. And then if we just start cycling through days. Hey, and it says bad water source over here. I'll get to that in a second. 1.3, 1.2, 1.9.4. And I think on this button press... Nope, this button press. Kaboom. And as we see, it makes that 5 wide hole. And presumably, if it had been in our town, it would have destroyed a bunch of stuff and killed our beavers. Let's test that. Yep, beaver deaths and destruction, both caused by that exploding core. That one seems to have made the game a little upset, so maybe I need to build a new district center. The lesson there, of course, is if you are building around an unstable core, be prepared for it to kill a bunch of your beavers, I guess, if you're not careful. It'll at the very least destroy a bunch of your stuff. Now, the other thing we saw as we were ticking down that unstable core, we saw something that said bad water. So bad water sources, it seems like, are now going to be delayed activation. I think you can also do this with any of the other water sources here. That delayed activation is going to essentially turn it into the mechanics of this unstable core, where it is going to wait, in this case, 3 cycles, and then after 3 cycles have gone by, 10 days, and then it is going to start pumping out bad water. Before that, it'll just lie dormant. Also, I don't think this was a thing before, but this bad water source now has a contamination level. So if we set that down to, let's say, 50, will it just pump out half good water? Oh, it does. That's interesting. So something for map makers, the contamination level on a bad water source directly influences the contamination of the water. So you could have half contaminated sources littered throughout the map. That is certainly interesting, and not quite what I was expecting. Unstable cores, as I've just discovered, can also blow up water sources. So lots of things here for map makers is what I'm getting at. I think, especially with unstable cores and delayed activation, we will see some very cool ideas come to life after 1.0 drops. And that, as far as I can tell, is the end of the list of gameplay changes that are here in this experimental branch. So as I said, since I'm not diving into all of the modding changes, that is going to be where I end this one. I'll continue to put out these videos as we continue to get more major gameplay updates to the experimental branch. I'll keep on top of that news, so you don't have to, other than watching the videos that I put out. If you want to keep up with that, then go ahead and either subscribe or go and join my Discord. We spent the whole morning talking about these gameplay changes, how we felt about them. So if you want some cool people to talk about Timberborn with, consider joining that. Otherwise, I'm pretty interested to hear what everyone, either their favorite change that we've seen in this experimental branch, or the thing that they think is going to be the most impactful. That unstable core really is, I think, going to open up some interesting challenge map design. So that's probably mine. And that's it. There's no sign off for experimental branch. I could steal Walter Cronkite's saying, and that's the way it is. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back when there's more news. Goodbye.